I was not a hero. Tay did not command armies or speak with the voice of faith. I was a simple scribe assigned to a listening post above a dead world, copying astropathic messages and logging warp traffic that never truly slept. The Imperium survives. En routine, and that day began like every other cold metal floors. Incense in the air, the distant hum of generators keeping the void at bay. Then the warp went quiet. At first, I thought the instruments had failed. That happens often enough. Machines lie, but the warp never does. It screams, it presses, it claws at the mind. Even when calm, it is never still. Yet, as I checked the readings again and again, there was nothing. No distortion, no psychic pressure. It was like listening for an ocean and hearing only stone. I felt watched, not hunted, not threatened, simply noticed. The astropaths were the first to react. One by one, their chanting stopped. No screams followed. Oh blood. They just fell silent, eyes wide, breath shallow, as if something vast had leaned close and they were afraid to breathe. One of them whispered that the warp would not answer him. Another began to cry, not in pain, but in fear so deep it seemed, older than language. Even chaos felt afraid. I know how that sounds, but I felt it. The usual background noise, the distant madness, the hateful echoes faded. It was not pushed away. It withdrew, like predators going still when something larger enters the dark. Alarms finally began to sound. Officers shouted orders they did not understand. Prayers were spoken too quickly, without faith. I looked through the viewing port, out into the void, and my hands began to shake. The stars were wrong. They did not explode or vanish. They bent, slowly, as if the sky itself was soft, and something immense was pressing against it from the other side. Colors bled into one another, deep greens and sickly blues that hurt to look at. The void felt close, heavy, crowded. In that moment, I understood something I had never been meant to know. This was not a warp storm. This was not chaos. This was not a god arriving in anger. This was something older than gods. And it had finally noticed us. Orders came fast after the silence was confirmed, but none of them made sense. I watched officers argue over data that refused to stay stable. The Inquisition declared the event heresy within minutes. They said it was a forbidden manifestation, a lie meant to weaken faith. I heard the word purge spoken more than once, as if burning people would somehow make the universe behave again. The Adeptus Mechanicus disagreed. They always do. To them, this was not heresy, but an anomaly beyond known parameters. I listened as tech priests recited long strings of binary code, trying to force logic onto something that rejected it. Their machines showed no corruption, no warp signature, no enemy pattern. That frightened them more than any demon ever could. Machines are supposed to fail loudly. These were failing quietly. The priests of the ecclesiarchy filled the halls with prayer. They said this was a test from the emperor, a trial of faith sent to harden our souls. Candles were lit, litanies repeated, relics carried through the station. I waited for the warmth that faith is supposed to bring. It never came. The prayers echoed and died, unanswered, like words spoken into a sealed tomb. I saw weapons being prepared everywhere. Macro cannons were armed. Void shields were pushed beyond safe limits. Space Marines stood in silence, checking their bolters, again and again, even though no target had been named. They did not speak of fear, but I saw it in the way their movements slowed, too careful, too controlled. They were trained to face hell itself, yet something here made them hesitate. The strangest part was chaos. There was no madness, no whispers, no sudden courage or rage. Cultists that had been screaming hymns hours before now sat in corners, shaking, clutching their heads. Psychers collapsed to the floor, blood running from their noses and eyes, even though they were not using their powers. The warp felt wrong, not hostile, empty, like a black ocean with no waves, no wind, no life. Then the pressure began. Not physical, but absolute. The air felt thick with meaning I could not grasp. I looked out once more into the void and saw something forming beyond reality itself, not tearing through the warp, not emerging from it. The warp was being pushed aside, space bent away, like water around a submerged mountain. A shape began to take form where no shape should exist. Vast, slow, uninterested. In that moment, every order, every prayer, every weapon felt small. Whatever was coming did not care if we understood it. The shape did not rush forward, did not break through reality with violence or fire. Became visible the way a thought becomes clear, slow, and unavoidable. At first, my mind tried to name it too, compare it to things I knew: ships, beasts, gods, but every comparison failed and fell apart. This was not a creature arriving in space. This was space realizing something had always been there. My thoughts began to slow, as if moving through deep water. Each idea took effort. Each memory felt distant and unimportant. Words lost their meaning the moment I formed them. Fear existed, but even fear felt small, like a child's response to something far beyond punishment or mercy. I was not being threatened. I was being exposed. The thing before us did not hate. There was no anger, no hunger, no desire to destroy. Hatred requires focus, and this presence did not focus on anything. It simply existed, vast and complete, and that existence pressed against reality like unbearable truth. I understood then that rage, cruelty, and malice are small things. They belong to beings who still care. Chaos recoiled. I felt it happen even before I saw it. Demonic shapes that had lingered at the edge of perception began to lose form. Not torn apart, not banished, forgotten. They dissolved like smoke in open air. Their screams cut short, not by force, but by irrelevance. Warp rifts shuddered and closed on their own, as if the Imperium itself was folding away in shame. The warp bent, not violently, gently, like fabric drawn around an object too heavy to resist. The madness that once screamed in the back of every thought fell silent. Emotion meant nothing here. Faith meant nothing. Desire, pain, hope of it passed through this presence without leaving a mark. Chaos feeds on feeling, on belief, on excess. This thing ignored all of it, the way a mountain ignores the wind. I became aware of my own smallness, not as fear, but as fact. Civilizations, empires, gods, these were patterns that rise and fall within a much larger silence. The chaos gods noticed this presence, and for the first time, they did not answer. They withdrew, not defeated, not challenged, simply overshadowed. Then understanding settled in, cold and clear. This thing had not been summoned. No ritual had called it, no prayer had invited it. It had arrived because it chose to look. And now that it had seen us, nothing would ever truly be the same. The first thing to fail was faith, not loudly, not in anger, but like a light slowly losing power. The Emperor's presence, something I had felt my entire life without question, began to flicker. It was faint, unstable, as if the golden certainty of mankind was struggling to stay real. The Astronomicon dimmed. Navigators screamed as its guiding light weakened, not extinguished, but reduced to something fragile and far away. No one spoke. The truth out loud, but everyone felt it. The Chaos Gods did not roar in defiance. They did not strike back. They went silent. Their endless hunger, their promises and threats vanished like echoes swallowed by a deeper void. For beings that live on belief and emotion, silence was worse than death. It meant they were no longer important. Weapons were fired. Titan legions unleashed everything they had. Plasma burned the void. Energy strong enough to level continents struck the shape beyond reality. It did nothing, not because it resisted, but because it did not register the attack. The blasts faded, meaningless sparks against something that was never part of the battle to begin with. Fleets broke formation without orders. Some retreated. Some powered down their weapons and drifted, as if pretending to be small might help. Command channels filled with half-finished commands and unanswered calls. No strategy applied. There was no enemy to outmaneuver, no weak point to exploit. Logic began to collapse. Everything the Imperium taught made sense only in a universe where power competes with power. Gods fight gods. Armies fight armies. This presence did none of that. It did not challenge the Emperor. It did not oppose chaos. It made them irrelevant, like outdated ideas exposed by a wider truth. I felt my identity weaken. Not fear of death, but fear of meaninglessness. If the Emperor was not the highest authority and chaos was not the greatest threat, then what was left of everything I believed? Faith, duty, sacrifice. These were built on the idea that something watched and cared. Ancient beings understood first. Old intelligences that had survived forgotten ages withdrew. Hidden. Weapons powered down. The pressure faded without warning. There was no retreat, no movement I could point to. The presence simply stopped being felt, like a thought interrupted before it could finish. The stars slowly returned to their proper shapes. Colors settled back into patterns the mind could accept. Reality did not heal so much as it stitched itself together, uneven and scarred. Silence followed. Not the heavy silence from before, but a wounded one. Systems began to respond again, though many returned altered. Warp readings stabilized, yet they were wrong in subtle ways, like familiar. Words spoken with the wrong meaning. Astropaths who survived refused to speak of what they sensed. Some tore out their own eyes,